Okay, so my name again is Jordy Izzard, and I'm an Alumni Relations Officer at SAIS, and I'm here with Pirie Gall, who graduated from SAIS in the class of 1969. Today's date is October 19th, 2010. And I want to thank you again for your time, and it's been a pleasure talking with you. And I'm just going to ask you some questions, and we'll have a little bit of a conversation and kind of go down memory lane. So we'll just start with what brought you to SAIS originally, and your interests.
Well, I was in the Peace Corps when I applied to SAIS. And I was in the Peace Corps partly because I went to Stanford and went on their overseas campus program my junior year, went to Italy. And so I had some language background and apparently some facility with language. I actually applied to the Peace Corps to go and do community development work anywhere in Latin America. And I ended up in Nepal. One of those quirks of the Peace Corps, they put you where they need you, and they didn't need me in Latin America. So I was in the second group of volunteers to go to Nepal, but I didn't lose my interest in Latin America. My grandfather was a professor of Spanish at the University of Michigan. One of my uncles was a career Foreign Service officer in Latin America. My brother majored in Spanish at Princeton, so foreign languages, and particularly Spanish, was a very strong strain in my upbringing. So, although I enjoyed my time in South Asia and Nepal, I decided I really wanted to study Latin American studies. And I wanted to do it in Washington, and I wanted to do it in a school that had people who were actively involved in international relations work. One of the main attractions of SAIS for me was the fact that a lot of the faculty had one foot in the real world and one foot in academia, and were somehow able to do both of those things. And I thought it would also give me some insights about where I wanted to go with my career. Then near the end of my Peace Corps service, we were given the opportunity, 6 of us in our group of 40 men working in community development in Nepal, to go to work for the Agency for International Development in Nepal in its rural development program. We had a couple of sort of visionary people who saw the usefulness of having some people with language skills and community relations skills working in the aid program, going out into the communities and checking up on programs and promoting new programs and devising new programs. So I wrote to SAIS and said, I can't come now, can I come later? And they wrote back and said, well, we can be more interested in you in 2 years' time after you've done what you just described you're going to be doing. So after 4 years in South Asia, I came back to SAIS and started doing studies on Latin America.
That's great. That's great. And what are your memories of SAIS? First, or most vivid, or what kind of comes to mind?
Well, after being out in the world of work for 4 years, and also out of the United States during a very turbulent time from 1963 to 1967, when the whole Vietnam thing was ratcheting up, the anti-Vietnam effort was coming on strong. There was a lot of sort of re-entry. Yes, we'd love to play with you, but not right now.
That's okay.
This is Annie, she's part of the interview. And she thinks it's playtime, but unfortunately it's not. No. She's totally bored by this whole thing.
That's okay.
Oh, don't jump up on me. Don't. Stay. Well, you can edit this tape.
No, you're fine. This is great.
So she, where was I?
We're talking about memories of SAIS.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So there was sort of the re-entry to the United States after 4 years abroad and trying to figure out what was going on and what was all this passion and anger about the war. And of course a lot of social, civil rights stuff going on, the whole mid-60s, thing. I mean, we'd been listening to Beatles music and stuff like that overseas, but, we didn't sort of have the flavor of what was really going on.
Right.
In addition to that, most of my fellow students were coming straight out of undergraduate school into graduate school. And I found a lot of them kind of up here in the air, kind of detached from reality and real life. And I particularly enjoyed the ones who, when asked what they wanted to do next after SAIS, said, I want to go make policy in, name the agency.
Right,
the
right,
World Bank,
right.
Oh, you're going to go make policy. I'm thinking, you going to do a little work first? You know? So I've been out there sort of trudging the hills of Nepal, investigating different kinds of programs, malaria programs, agriculture projects, and you know, so forth and so on. And
Field experience.
yeah, and a lot of this theoretical stuff I had a hard time with. In fact, at one point I actually wrote a paper for one of my professors on why political science isn't science. And basically my oversimplified theory was because the basic unit of measure isn't an atom or a proton or something from the table of elements, but it's a human being. You know, they're not predictable, and you can't really study them as predictable bodies.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, I turned in the paper, and he handed it back to me the next day and said, "You may want to take this home and think about it some more." We remained good friends after that. But that was my sort of broadside attack on all this social science theory stuff that I was beginning to get sort of theories of social change, theories of political change. You know, if you do this, then that will happen. And
Sure.
You know, it's not, doesn't work that way. You
Right.
know, I'd been out there trying to do it.
Right.
So, but I had, you know, made some very good friends, a lot of whom I kept for years after until I sort of wandered off into other arenas. And what else can I say about SAIS? Oh, I think my language teaching, language learning experience was something I value very much. I had a Peruvian Spanish professor who was at least quadrilingual. He was a simultaneous interpreter, which is, of course, a different skill from translator. He was also a translator, but he could do simultaneous interpretation in Japanese, Spanish, French, English, and German, and any combination of those. So he was much in demand for international conferences and so forth. But he was very strict about Spanish. Okay, just a second. Turn it off for a second.
Sure. I'll wait. It's got to be one file. Yeah, no problem.
Turn it off, you say? No, turn it off. Oh, turn it off. Yes, we can try. Okay.
No, you're fine.
No, I think usually these guys are in and out of here in 10 minutes. Everything's fine, off they come. He was very strict. He didn't like anglicized words used in Spanish. He was very tough, very hard, and you know, it served me very well later
Yeah.
in my career when I actually ended up working in Latin. It was several years before I worked in Latin America. I did some odds and ends of work in Spanish-speaking communities in the United States, but I didn't really get into Latin America until sort of later in my career.
And what countries were you in?
Well, we were, when I went, I left AID in '67 when I came back to SAIS, and then worked in private consulting, and then worked on Peace Corps staff. Left Peace Corps, went back to consulting, and ended up back in AID in the 1980s. And although I was, the flip side of my Peace Corps experience, I was recruited by the Asia Bureau and ended up working in the Latin America Bureau. It was Peace Corps, I was trying to get into Latin America and ended up in Asia. But my Spanish language skills is basically what got me into the Latin America Bureau. And we lived in the Dominican Republic and in Guatemala during our overseas period.
Is there any more about your career that you can talk about?
Well, I worked for a private consulting firm, which was contracted to various federal agencies, domestic and foreign, for about 7 years. And in that capacity, I traveled pretty much around the world. In fact, one trip took me from Ethiopia to Nepal to the Philippines and back to the States.
Wow.
Coming back to the States, I re-entered through Hawaii.
That's quite the global
And
tour.
they took a look, and I did this in about 10 days.
Wow.
And they took a look at my itinerary and the stamps in my passport and invited me into a back room for a chat. They said, maybe Nepal, which at that time was considered part of, I guess, the drug trade. East Africa, and I don't know, there was something about my pattern of travel that made them think they wanted me to take off my shoes and tap the heels of my shoes and look more closely at my luggage and so forth and so on. But with that, I did a lot of short-term work in different parts of the world, but I wasn't resident overseas any place. But I did get to Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America. And then the firm had some financial problems and had to scale back staff, and I went to work for Peace Corps as a program planning officer, sort of for the whole agency, during an interesting time from sort of the end of the Reagan administration through the Carter years and into the, it was the end of the Ford administration through the Carter years and into the beginning of the Reagan administration, which gave me sort of an inside view of how transitions work in the federal government. And again, in that job, I was able to travel to West Africa and other places I hadn't been. We did staff training projects overseas with Peace Corps staff. And then I sort of, at that time, they still had the 5-year statutory limit on Peace Corps staff service. So I was 5-yeared out, and
wow, I didn't know that could happen.
Yep, they've relaxed that a bit now, but the idea was there shouldn't be a career service in Peace Corps staff. Fresh blood, fresh ideas coming in. It's one of those Sergeant Shriver bright ideas that had its upside and its downside. And so I went back into consulting basically on a freelance basis for a couple of years.
So consulting, Peace Corps, USAID, what's your favorite part of your career, if there was one?
I guess it would be, I sort of got into evaluating municipal development programs in Latin America. In fact, I actually published a book on the subject based on a report I worked on.
What's the name of the book? What's the name of the book?
Municipal Development in Latin America.
Great, okay.
It was published by Prager in 1976 or something. But that was when I sort of felt like I was really kind of doing something nobody else was doing. And then I've dabbled back into that over the years. But I think what SAIS gave me was very much a sort of an appreciation of the interaction between the academic and the real life world. It probably, when I came in to the institution, was probably more academic than I expected it to be. I had to make an adjustment to that and play by the rules, which I'm never very good at. But it was a good time, and I think opened doors for me into a lot of interesting sort of career possibilities and connections.
Absolutely. Good. And do you stay in touch with any SAIS alumni?
Not very much. I think that 6 years overseas kind of broke off a lot of old friendships somehow. Kind of hard to keep those up when you're totally immersed in overseas life. I occasionally run into folks.
Yeah, and if you were to look at SAIS students today, What advice might you have for them, given all that you've done in your career?
Keep your mind open to possibilities. And obviously this is a fast-changing world, and I'm somebody who has, as I've described to you, not had a very straight-line career. I've sort of bounced around from one thing to another. Like I said, when we were off camera, I got into arts management after I finished my aid career in '99. And even there, some of the things I learned in SAIS, like my Spanish, have been helpful. But
Yeah, that's great.
it's also on one of my consulting assignments, went to Colombia and met my wife, and she was working in the aid mission there, and I was evaluating a program that she was involved with. And we raised a bilingual daughter, whose own career has been helped by being bilingual.
And does she speak Spanish
So,
as well?
yes, she does. She's pretty fluent in both languages. Partly because her mother spoke nothing but Spanish with her when she was growing up.
Right. Wow, that's neat.
So she'd come home and she would divide the world into Spanish speakers and English speakers when she was 4 or 5 years old.
Sure.
And if members of my family and my wife's family were in the room, and for example my mother would try out her not very good Spanish on her, she would answer her in English. If my brother-in-law tried his quite good English on her uncle from Colombia, she would answer him in Spanish.
Sure.
I mean, you're in a box, stay in that box, don't, you know.
Yeah,
Don't mess with the formula
yeah.
here, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, good. Well, I really appreciate
Advice.
Yeah,
So
good.
I guess following that line of thought, back to the question, I think taking full use of the language program, which I'm assuming is as strong as it ever was.
About, I think, 17 languages now
Wow.
offered.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, my wife worked in the language department at AU, Language and Foreign Studies department. I think she learned to say hello in 14 languages or something.
That's great.
But that's probably one of the greatest assets, you know, especially these days, if you can learn Arabic or Chinese. One of those. I did work latter part of my career at AID in the Middle East, so I ran a program in Lebanon and was desk officer for Jordan. And I certainly wish I knew more than 12 phrases in Arabic.
Sure.
It would have been so much more.
How long were you in Jordan?
I was a desk officer in Washington, so I'd go out on
okay.
short orientation trips, checkout trips, and so forth. And when I was working on the Lebanon program, because of the security situation, we didn't have any American aid people in Beirut. So I would have to fly out to Larnaca, Cyprus, and get on an army helicopter and be flown into Beirut and dropped into the embassy compound in a helicopter, and then travel around in Lebanon with an armed convoy. Yeah, it was really kind of silly. That's all loosened up now, but that's the way it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'd say to a SAIS student, follow your dream where it takes you, and if you start out thinking you want to be in international business and find out that fighting international poverty is something you'd rather be doing,
Go for it.
go for it. Go back to school, read another book, get to know some people in the field.
So keep an open mind and take advantage of language opportunities. Yeah.
I'd say
That's great.
sum it up pretty well.
It's helped you. Yeah, that's neat. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. Those
Happy to
are,
help.
all the questions I have, and it's really a joy to be able to hear your story and your career. And you've done
Good.
so much for the world, so thank you.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you.